Hi, Chip Cooper, Internet Attorney, and I'm starting to get a lot of questions about the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, known as COPPA, and that's primarily due to the fact that there were very significant amendments to COPPA and the COPPA rule enforced by the Federal Trade Commission effective July 1, 2013. And the big question, the threshold question, is whether your website is a so-called general audience website not directed to children under 13, or whether it is a website directed to children under 13 and thereby regulated by and subject to the COPPA rule as enforced by the Federal Trade Commission. Now, the way that the Federal Trade Commission determines which type of website you operate is to look at a series of factors which we'll take a look at on the next slide. Okay, so these are the factors that the Federal Trade Commission, the FTC, would consider in determining whether your website is a general audience website or a website directed to U13s. And of course, the subject matter and content of your website is extremely important in that determination, including games that might be attractive to children, also the age of any models that might appear on your website and the verbiage on your website, and also musical content that might be attractive to children under 13, including now also child celebrities that might be attractive to children under 13, and celebrities who in their own right are not children, nor are they maybe even teenagers, but due to their programming are generally viewed as being attractive to children under 13. And then finally, advertisements, even though you do not make the advertisements directly yourself, if they are served by a third-party ad-serving network and they appeal to U13s, you'll be held responsible for those. So these are the factors the FTC considers in making this determination. So, after considering the factors on the slide, if the Federal Trade Commission determines that your website is directed to U13s, then you will be subject to COPPA and the COPPA rule as enforced by the Federal Trade Commission. Now, this means that the regulations are very numerous and very complex and therefore very difficult to comply with. However, the general rule, sort of the starting point with COPPA in order to understand it, is that you cannot collect any personal information from a U13 without prior parental consent, not after, but prior parental consent prior to collecting the information. Now, with respect to the new regulations effective July 1, 2013, there was a significant expansion in scope of the categories of information that are now deemed to be personal information, and there was also an expansion of the scope of the methodologies that you might use in collecting this information. So, in conclusion, if you're regulated by COPPA, you're subject to very complex regulations, very difficult to comply with extremely difficult sanctions and fines that could be levied if you do not comply. That's the end of the video. Thanks for watching. This video is provided for informational purposes only, and it should not be considered as legal advice. You're encouraged to subscribe to my YouTube channel for additional tips.